Hello and welcome to the Rewind, where we dive into the making and legacy of various films from cult classics to award-winning masterpieces. Today's film is From Dusk Till Dawn, a grindhouse-inspired blend of crime thriller and action horror that stars George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino as fugitive criminal brothers who take a family as hostages to cross into Mexico, but ultimately find themselves facing an even greater threat. From Dusk Till Dawn is essentially a movie of two halves made by two filmmakers in Rodriguez and Tarantino, who would go on to dominate the 1990s with their respective forms of cinema. Joining me today to talk about From Dusk Till Dawn is Adam P. Cray. He's an actor, producer, and co-founder of film studio Cinema Mixta, who released a highly acclaimed horror thriller, Where the Dead Go, that is now available to watch on Tubi and Foursome. Adam, I thank you so very much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, great to be here.
So, From Dusk Till Dawn celebrates an anniversary this month. I believe it's 30 years since this came out, which is kind of mind-boggling to me because some movies have anniversaries this year, and I distinctly remember watching them, and I can't believe it's been 30 years since that has been so. So the first time I watched this film was on video, or I don't think it was DVD yet. It was definitely video. Could have been DVD, but not 100%. I'm trying to remember now if it was DVD or video. Anyway, watched that at home, because at that time, Tarantino and Rodriguez, both of them were like they were the guys, right? I mean, Pulp Fiction, especially for my generation, was an essential film, and Tarantino, an essential filmmaker. Same goes with Desperado with Rodriguez as well. So when you see like both names attached to the one project, people kind of just jumped on it, right? Because of the potential that could be seen there. But along with myself, along with many other people, no one could predict what was going to happen in front of them. Because while Tarantino and Rodriguez kind of grew up with movies kind of similar to that, like the whole grindhouse thing and such, and they essentially called it like an unofficial double feature because it is a movie of two halves in the film. For people like my generation, this has just blew our minds because we had no idea what was going on. The switch comes in the middle, turns from this very Tarantino-esque kind of crime thriller to this horror film with vampires and all this other stuff, and it was just wonderful, spectacular. I love this movie to this day, and I think it's just a fantastic piece of just great, like B-grade genre cinema with A-grade talent. That's what I feel of it. Adam, do you remember the first time that you saw From Dusk Till Dawn?
Um, I saw it on VHS. I somehow missed it on the big screen. I was going through my last year or two of college, so there was a lot of study and a lot of, just that I was all kind of caught up in my studies. So when I saw it, it was on VHS. And it's funny because I would have loved to have not known it was a vampire movie. Can you imagine going into this movie not knowing what you're seeing, and then all of a
Mm.
sudden, like vampires come up? But it was, it was. I remember being surprised by it nonetheless. Just it was such a cool mix of mixta of genres, and I think that's what really kind of put it apart from the rest of that time. But yeah, as you said, it was such a great time to be going to the movies between Pulp Fiction and Desperado and Dust Till Dawn and the whole cinematic universe that they were creating.
Yeah.
Tarantino and Rodriguez. I mean, it was good. I was able to appreciate it, more towards the late '90s. But it was, and of course, El Mariachi was a huge inspiration for me. I think it was like the first movie that really told me that I could make movies, that it was all possible. Um, and I actually heard from Carlos. I'm dear friends with Carlos Gallardo. He helped us with Where the Dead Go. He starred and executive produced the film, and he narrates the feature. And he told me there was an interesting tidbit in Dust Till Dawn. And I'm not sure if you knew this. I looked it up online and I couldn't find anything about it. But when everyone passes the border and they go under that sign that says Feliz Viaje,
Hmm.
that is actually Ciudad Acuña, where El Mariachi was filmed. So
Ah.
they technically pass through like the town that Mariachi was filmed. So just a little bit of trivia, something I didn't know that Carlos shared with me yesterday.
was it's something that's really great. You mentioned before, kind of like the worlds, kind of like what Tarantino and what Rodriguez built. It's something that's great about this movie. It's just these little things that kind of pop up that have appeared in previous Tarantino and Rodriguez films. A lot of kind of like crossover in there. Tarantino is known to be like made his own kind of movie universe, which he puts a fine line between it. He says there's like the real universe, which is movies like Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, and it is the other universe, which is the movies that the people from the real universe watch. And I think From Dusk Till Dawn fits in more in that kind of mold. But you see all these things like the type of beer, the cigarettes, food stuff, which I'll go through later because it is kind of fun to put all these sort of tidbits together. The Easter eggs, I guess that they'll call it now. Um, so I want to just talk about just the initial conception of this movie. So it's actually conceived by someone named Robert Kurtzman, who was actually a well-known special effects person. He came up with the
Hmm.
story back in 1988. Um, and so he wrote this kind of 25-page treatment, and he wanted to make it, but he's at that time he was doing a lot of stuff with special effects stuff. You know, his stuff he's worked on is like Misery, Wishmaster, 13 Ghosts, Scream. Like he's quite a big name in that. So I imagine he's too busy kind of working at the time to get the movie going. So he kind of shelves the script. Later on, he wants to work on it. At first, he was going to have John Esposito working it with him, but then he had to do something else. So then he finds someone named Quentin Tarantino, who at the time was a video store clerk. He wasn't working on anything. And he actually pays Quentin Tarantino $1,500 to write the script. And another tidbit which is really interesting at this time that Kurtzman said. So at that time, Tarantino has three scripts written already. He has True Romance, Natural Born Killers, and Reservoir Dogs. He has his own scripts. The only one that was option at the time was True Romance. And Kurtzman said in an interview that he looks back on it now and kicking himself because he could have grabbed Natural Born Killers and Reservoir Dogs before they went option. I'm sure yourself as a someone who has your own independent studio and a filmmaker now, you would be kicking yourself too if you imagine meeting Quentin Tarantino in like 1990, 1991, knowing that Reservoir Dogs was there for the taking and he didn't do it.
Oh yeah, definitely be kicking myself.
So he has this movie. So he pays Tarantino the 1,500. Tarantino wrote the screenplay. Again, they shelve it. Tarantino does his own stuff. Reservoir Dogs and then Pulp Fiction, which really kind of blows up for him. And then after that, Tarantino's like, I want to go back to the screenplay and work on it. So when he does, he says that originally the movie was supposed to be a follow-up to you remember Tales of the Crypt, that TV show that was big in the
Hmm.
US? They had a movie called Demon Knight that came out, I think, like
Hmm.
92, 93. Billy Zane. So
I remember.
supposedly this was supposed to be a follow-up to that. Like I think they were going to have similar
Oh,
characters and followed it up, but the producer said no. So they moved on. They moved on from that. But that's another kind of interesting thing as well. Like I don't know why when you have a hot property like Tarantino and Rodriguez wanted to make stuff like this, that the producers of that would say no. It's kind of funny, don't you think?
yeah, yeah. Do you also know about the movie Curdled, the feature
No,
Curdled?
no.
Well, Curdled was came out around the same time, and it was directed by Reb Braddock, and it was executive produced by Quentin. And the funny thing is the main character in the story. There's a TV show on in the background, and they actually mention the Gecko brothers. And if I remember
Ah,
correctly, they actually have their mug shots up there. So it's just a little connection. Not everyone knows about, but if you get a chance, you should definitely check it out because it does have that sort of Tarantino mid '90s vibe, and it stars Angela Jones from the cab driver from Pulp Fiction.
right,
So
yes.
so yeah, that would be one for you to check out. And just I wasn't sure if you knew about that, but
I had no idea about that one. But again, it comes back to like Tarantino and Rodriguez kind of like, just being a part of this kind of multi like movies within movies kind of world that they established. And other people at that time, like Kevin Smith, for example, did that as well. That was quite good as well. So Tarantino met Rodriguez during the festival run, during the time when Rodriguez was doing Il Mariachi, going back to talking about Il Mariachi. At that time, Tarantino had was asking Kurtzman to direct the film From Dusk Till Dawn. Studio wouldn't do it. Tony Scott showed some interest because, of course, he did True
Hmm.
Romance. It didn't work out. And then he says to Rodriguez, he goes, "Hey, we want to do this script," and he says yes. And it was really interesting how, at first, like going back to the Demon Knight thing, Rodriguez said in an interview, I think it was like 10 years ago, has like they were really trying to test the boundaries with having like the two movies in one. And there's a before Pulp Fiction and after Pulp Fiction. Before Pulp Fiction,
Hmm.
everyone they approached about doing this film said, no way, not going to work. And then after, everyone wanted to jump on it and said, two movies in one, it's fantastic.
Hmm.
We'd love to do that. I think it just goes to show some of the fickle nature of Hollywood, right? I mean, it's the same concept, it's the same people, but it just takes one film or one success and then everyone just kind of changes their mind on it.
No, this is true. This is true, and a lot of it is timing. I mean, it was the time for Pulp Fiction and From Dusk Till Dawn. It was the time for these films. So I think it's a lot of it is it's creativity and it's luck and it's timing. So I think it was definitely the right time.
So timing as well in regards to the cast. So we got Tarantino on, we got Rodriguez. We already know Tarantino's playing one of the Gecko brothers. We know this already, and we can talk about his acting in a later on. But one of the big names they get on, George Clooney. So now the George Clooney of today, of 2026, compared to the George Clooney of 1996, are two kind of different, very different kind of status of star. 1996 George
Very.
Clooney, ER, that was his thing, TV star.
Hmm.
Interestingly, Tarantino actually directed an episode of ER, I think back in 1994 or so. And that's the kind of
Hmm.
first time like them two kind of like, work together. But the role of Seth Gecko, the more kind of I say the more rational of the two Gecko brothers, still a madman, but rational, was given to a lot of people first to read, and they all turned it down. So the names that I found is Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, Steve Buscemi, Christopher Walken, and John Travolta. The John Travolta one is really interesting because Travolta was presented two scripts, From Dusk Till Dawn or Pulp Fiction, and we know which one he chose,
Well,
and it's a very wise choice on his
yeah,
part, I think.
yeah,
So,
yeah. He won an Oscar for Pulp Fiction, correct?
nomination, Oscar nomination for that. So that was his big kind of
Nomination,
comeback.
nomination. Yeah,
So after
yeah,
all those guys
yep.
turned it down, they go to Clooney. So Clooney at the time, I saw an interview he did with I forgot who it was, but it's on YouTube and I'll have that in the show notes. He said that he was being very careful about what he wanted to do film-wise because the transition to TV to film back in the 90s is totally different now. Nowadays it's seamless because of streaming and such. But he was like trying to be very careful. So he just wanted to be in a good film with a couple of good scenes. That's all he was aiming for. But then he gets approached from Tarantino Rodriguez, and he said that even before he read the script, he said yes, just because of the names that are attached to it. So I think like for a lot of people, seeing like a TV star in a movie, like a big movie, even though it's an $18 million budget, we're talking Tarantino, Rodriguez is playing in cinemas. It was such a different thing. I mean, who else at the time really kind of transitioned in that way from TV to movies? I can't really think of many. I mean, some people tried, a lot didn't succeed, but
Yeah.
I think George Clooney is like one of the few examples of someone who managed to pull that off.
No, this is true, and yeah, very different character as you mentioned. I mean, on ER he was saving lives, and from Dusk Till Dawn he was taking them, and a bunch of
Yes.
them. So it was kind of yeah, it was you know as different as two characters could be. So that was, I'm sure, a bit risky on his part, but no, I remember watching it and just thinking like, okay, he's a big screen actor.
Mm.
He's a movie actor here. So I remember watching him on Facts of Life too. I don't know if you remember that. He was on that for a little while, the sitcom in the '80s. So I think that's where he got his start. But always very accessible and authentic. Definitely a favorite of mine.
The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you love. I think Rodriguez kind of described him as kind of like, or at least back then, Maybe actually, I think this was an interview from like 20 years ago. He called him kind of like an everyday man, but he could play kind of like every type of role. He could do horror, he could do thriller, he could do comedy kind of stuff. And it is kind of rare to find an actor who can pull off something like that, I think. And like his career has sustained for such a long time because he's also become a director and producer. But to think that his movie career started with this ultra violent kind of like grindhouse inspired kind of thing, I think it's really kind of fascinating and inspiring as well for other any other actors out there to who a lot of times people start off with these kind of like genre films and then they go on to become big movie stars. I think when it comes to From Dusk Till Dawn, though, you can't think of a better genre film to star in. I think, yeah.
Yeah, and then he worked with Robert again on the Spy Kids movies. Remember, he was in those too. So
That's right.
he's from Dusk Till Dawn to the kids movies. He's yeah, just amazing performer. A lot of range.
A lot of range. It's a shame
Yeah.
though that these days both Tarantino and Clooney seem to be a little at loggerheads though. I think they both kind of like Tarantino likes to talk. Lately with the whole Paul Dano, Owen Wilson thing, and Clooney has no qualm at all in talking back. I think it's a shame that they're kind of like on the outs because the whole thing about Tarantino having a final film coming up, the 10th, the Magic number 10 movie, which I find to be a ridiculous concept on his part. I mean, why limit yourself that way? But it would have been great to see them working together again in a Tarantino movie, reading Tarantino's lines, because he does a great job in this movie with all those kind of wordy kind of dialogue that Tarantino likes to put together. So it is a shame they're not working with they probably won't work with each other again.
And he's really great with like the facial tics and things that
Oh
you
yeah.
see, like the very subtle, like I think when Santanigo Pandemonium's about to attack him, he does one of these little
Hmm.
it's just priceless. So yeah, but no, I mean it would be great to see the two of them collaborate again, and who knows, maybe they'll patch things up. I mean everything is things are changing all the time, so you never know. But I don't know. Tarantino might even go beyond 10 movies. It's just like these bands that have the final tour. Three final tours. It's
Well,
like I don't know.
yeah.
I take it
It
all
could
with a
be
grain of salt.
Tarantino could be the Kiss or Motley Crue of directors
I
when it
guess
comes back to
yeah.
one more round go around. Some interesting trivia according to Clooney himself. The tattoo that Seth has in a movie, that kind of big kind of tribal kind of thing. He actually
Mhm.
was inspired from a New Zealand movie called Once Were Warriors. Have you ever seen Once Were Warriors? It's Tamira Morrison.
No,
Oh my God, if
no.
you want to watch a great, it's just a warning though, it's incredibly impactful in its violence. But there was a New
Okay.
Zealand film that was released back in 1994. It starred Tamira Morrison, who more people know of as Boba Fett in the Star Wars movies, but he's a powerful New Zealand actor. Came out in
Hmm.
1994. Highly recommended if you want to watch like a like impactful, powerful kind of drama. I think it's a great film. But anyway, so in like Kiwi culture, especially Maori culture, they have those tattoos, like the all this kind of tribal, sometimes face tattoos, all that stuff. Like all like we see it popular now amongst athletes and superstars.
Hmm.
This is for them like a very kind of spiritual kind of concept in the tattoo. So Clooney saw that, was inspired by it and had it in the movie. But ironically, a lot of Clooney has said that a lot of kind of New Zealand kind of hip hop stars and such actually come to him and say, "Oh, we were inspired by your movie and
Oh,
your
they don't
tattoo to
know.
get our own tattoo." And he's just like, "Well, I got
Oh,
it from you guys, so I don't know what you're talking about." It's kind of
inspiration comes around. That's great.
circular.
Yeah,
Um,
circular.
Another person in the film, Harvey Keitel, who I think was probably at that time the biggest name in the movie. So
Hmm.
he worked with Tarantino before, Reservoir Dogs, of course, Pulp Fiction. I'd say the 90s. I know Harvey Keitel kind of like made his bones in the 70s and with Taxi Driver and Fingers and the 80s he was kind of working as well. But I'd say the 90s was kind of like Harvey Keitel at his best, in my opinion. I
Hmm.
mentioned Reservoir Dogs, Bad Lieutenant. He was fantastic at that. Smoke. And I think a lot of that has come down to the influence that Tarantino had in his career. I can't find any quotes from Keitel talking about this movie. All I know is that Clooney, I found an interview where George Clooney was talking about working with him, and he said that even though this was like a silly kind of grindhousey kind of movie, um, Keitel was still very method, still very in his role kind of thing. And he said the first couple of weeks were very intimidating. No joking on set, none of that stuff. Like he had to really be in process. As time went on, Keitel, lightened up a bit and such. But I think it'd be very interesting for an actor like Clooney, especially, who comes from the world of TV, to work alongside such a giant of film acting, especially I imagine the films that Clooney grew up watching, your Taxi Drivers and such like that. And he said, again, it was intimidating. I imagine it would be as well. I mean, have you ever been on a set like with someone where it's like you're alongside a huge kind of, I know you've been in the background of Rocky Balboa, for example, just being in the presence of someone like Stallone, for example, let alone working with him, there's a certain air of authority, intimidation there, would you say?
It's interesting because one of the things that they told us when they were, to all of the extras is whatever you do, don't talk to Sylvester Stallone. Don't.
Mm,
So I was like, oh, okay. So I saw him kind of off to the side, on a break, and went up to him, and I found him to be extremely down to earth and humble. I simply said, "Hey, I'm just really happy you're making this movie, because
mm,
Rocky Balboa, I mean, it was I think the Rocky sequel we never thought we'd see happen at the
yeah.
time. So it was pretty amazing. So I found him to be humble and just watching him work, being in the stands with most of them were fans. I mean, people had come. I think a kid had flown over from London, a young guy,
Mm,
just to be there for Rocky's final fight. And I had driven from LA to Las Vegas. No, I wasn't getting paid. I mean, I did it just for the experience, and I was actually unemployed, so things were very tight. And then I had friends that had flown in from Massachusetts, so we all, it was like mega, just surrounded by mega Stallone fans and Rocky fans. So it was amazing. But to see him work, because he was directing camera shots. He'd be like, okay, this and this, and then he'd jump in the ring, and then he'd box. He'd be running around, and taking some fake punches and some light real punches, and it was just. I mean, I was, as a Rocky fan, I was in my glory. And it was, so I didn't. I found the general energy there was of respect, and it wasn't necessarily intimidation from what I could see, from what I was witnessing. It was just very, everyone just had a deep respect for Sly, and myself included. So it was like we all wanted to see the best movie possible because most of us were fans. So it was quite a thing, quite a thing.
thank you for sharing that. It's great to know because I love Stallone's for me. It's like, just up here for me.
Yeah.
Like, just I love it. It's interesting talking to so many people. I know some huge big Stallone fans like John Fallon, who does Arrow in the Head over at Joe Blow. He's a big one as well, and some of the other Joe Blow guys talking to them about Stallone. I know a few of them that have interviewed him, and they said the same thing. He's just like a great guy. Coming back
Mm.
to Harvey Keitel, it's really interesting. So in the initial script. So there's the first script, and then Quentin rewrites it after Pulp Fiction. The initial script actually had the Ezekiel Bible speech. Remember the one that Samuel Jackson does in Pulp Fiction? That was written originally for Harvey Keitel's character in From Dusk
Oh,
Till Dawn. And I thought to myself, I can see that. You can imagine a scene where he's in front of all these vampires. Maybe he's got that mock shotgun crucifix kind of thing, and he says the speech. It would have been just great to see Harvey Keitel do that speech. I think he would have knocked it out of the park, I think.
yeah, in an alternate universe, an alternate cinematic universe. Yeah. Now you got me thinking of where I would have put that speech, him saying that speech. But no, I mean, in front of the vampires, that's perfect. That's perfect. Mm.
So I'm just going to go to one more cast member because we could talk about this cast for 2 days because it's such a great cast. I mean, people like Cheech
Easily.
Marine
Yeah.
and Tom Savini, Danny Trejo, John Hawkes is at the start, that awesome beginning of the movie as well. Fred Williamson, the legendary Fred Williamson as well. I want to talk about though Salma Hayek because I think when a lot of people think From Dusk Till Dawn, they think about Santa Nico Pandemonium, the vampire stripper in the film that Salma Hayek just knocks out of the park. I think, she's fantastic in this role. She's has to be like top 10, like most beautiful, sexiest kind of women that grace the silver screen, I think for sure. So
Hmm.
she worked with Rodriguez before in Desperado. That was kind of like a big call out kind of movie, right? So he
Hmm.
asked her to do this movie. The problem is that she has to dance with an 11-foot like python, and she's afraid of snakes, which I think is just incredible. But she did it anyway. She actually said that because of her fear of snakes, but she had to do this scene, um, that she had to go into a sort of hypnosis or a trance and try to get into like a state of mind, and kind of treat it like a ritual because she said that um, she was reading kind of like thing about ancient Aztecs and the relationship with snakes and stuff like this, like a spiritual kind of context. So she was kind of do that. So she kind of had to get herself into a certain mindset as well. And the other cool thing
Hmm.
about that scene is that there was no choreographer. Rodriguez said, "Feel the music and go with it," and that's what we get on the screen right there. But I think
Hmm.
just that scene alone is probably the biggest selling point of this movie, just because it's just so sensual and just sexual, but kind of odd as well in a certain way. There's something going on here. There's like the ritual aspect that she kind of talked about. There is something kind of supernatural going on there, especially when you have the snake and everything else. I think it was just a fantastic scene. Still to this day, one of the great kind of like sensual kind of like scenes, let alone dancing or what have you. Just because what she does to it and just the environment that she does it in, I think she's fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, and I didn't know about being hypnotized because the scene itself is hypnotic. She's sort of
Mm,
hypnotizing the guys around her, the people around her, and myself included, to be honest. I mean, and everyone else that everyone that was watching. I mean, it was a very, and I think that was smart to have her do her own choreography because it came from her soul, so it was a very natural. I didn't know that part either, that she improvised that. So that's amazing, though, and that's to me, that's like successful collaboration. That's Rodriguez having the sense to be like, you create this, you make this, have it come from you.
mm. I think it's just also just a director just knowing his actors. And I think this is
Hmm.
something really cool about both Tarantino and Rodriguez especially, is that they cast the same people over. It's almost like they have their troupe of actors. Rodriguez especially, like we talk about Hayek, Selma Hayek, he's done so many things with her. You mentioned we even talked about Spy Kids as well. She's been in a couple of those, Four Rooms, lots of different movies that they've done together. And I think it's just he knew like she had like I mean again we're talking about like one of the most gorgeous sexiest kind of women of all time. He knows that she can pull that off for sure, and that whatever she does is going to be movie magic, and it turned out to be so. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. I want to talk about the making, the behind the scenes kind of stuff. So, and maybe you could put some perspective on this for me. So,
Hmm.
Rodriguez was known at that time, especially being an independent filmmaker, of working with kind of like non-union crews. And he
Hmm.
did that for this movie as well. But this movie wasn't like the previous ones. This was an $18 million budget movie. And usually when you have like that kind of budget, especially back in 96, like what's 18 million back then? Maybe something 50 million now, right? Like a
About that,
mid-tier
yeah.
kind of, yeah. So he again goes non-union. So the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, they said they were like, they were rebuked by both the producer Lawrence Bender and Tarantino into trying to get involved. And the documentary, there's a documentary called Full Tilt Boogie, which I think came out in 97, 98. Kind of documents kind of
Hmm.
like that behind the scenes kind of stuff going on. Um, so I have some ignorance in regards to because I haven't been on a film set. I know about, the
Hmm.
process of it, but I haven't been boots on ground kind of stuff like that. When it comes to a movie like this, when it has big names like it has and it's backed by Miramax and all that, I was surprised that even to shoot at all, I was surprised there wasn't like big strikes or anything going against, or even other people in Hollywood themselves would have talked about it because we've seen big strikes before in regards to writer strikes and actor strikes. Um, are you kind of surprised that the movie was still allowed to go ahead at that budget, even though there was no union attached to it? Is that something that's common? I don't think it'd be common anymore, right? Like as it was
Probably
maybe
not
back then.
any, probably not anymore. I mean, I wasn't as privy to that part of it in the '90s. I mean, I was a student for one thing, and I was studying film analysis and screenwriting, and just starting to shoot my own projects. So I didn't know a lot about the business in the background, but I don't think that I don't think that would happen today. I think it would be, everything is definitely more, I think, enforced as far as that. So yeah, so that's yeah, yeah. Something I'd like to read up on though, because just the history of those legalities
Hmm.
and what the vibe might have been. If you have a, if you have a happy set, and you're working with an amazing filmmaker, you'll a lot of actors will just give them a break.
Hmm.
Give the production a break because it's you have directors that just make the process fun. And I get the impression that Robert is one of those, especially as you mentioned before, he worked with a lot of the same actors. And I know I can speak being a filmmaker and my partner Alberto Rodriguez, we made Where the Dead Go. We really, we've used the same people a few times because it's almost like we're building a family, like
Hmm.
a filmmaking family. And you get to, of course, you get to know everyone's ability and what they can do, what they can't do, and there's a lot of trust and faith involved. So I can only speculate. I don't know for sure what went on behind those scenes back then. But speaking as a filmmaker, the people you work with are of the most value, and most of them will go above and beyond, and especially if you involve them in the process, and just like Robert saying, come up with your dance, Selma, have it come from you. So I don't know.
So according to the notes that I found, the first 5 weeks of shooting was the bar fight, like the big fight at the end. So they did that on a
Hmm.
soundstage in Los Angeles. So
Hmm.
once they decided to move away from that and start doing location stuff, a lot of kind of weird things started happening. Supposedly there was in one of the final scenes before they left the bar. There's a part where the bar explodes. You know that scene where the bar explodes and George
Hmm.
Clooney walks away from all that. Supposedly
Hmm.
it worked a little too well, because the
Oh,
fire just continued while they were shooting. They couldn't get it
oh,
out.
oh,
And
wow.
then they get it out, and then a dust storm hits. And so they have
Hmm.
to stop filming just altogether because, I imagine they're around desert, stuff like that would happen. And then after the dust storm happens, later on, they get hit by like kind of like a monsoon kind of situation. So it's like one thing after another and after another and after another. Um, they're working, it is an independent project that they're working on, despite the names they have on it. When you're hit with like difficulties like that, Adam, what is it? Is it just just next day man up kind of situation? Is that pretty much what you have to do? No time for no crying in baseball kind of situation when things like that happen on set.
Yeah, and they happen. I mean, they happen most of the time. You have to. I think you just have to kind of roll with it, And in some cases, it can turn into a happy accident. I mean, if like for instance, we Alberto and I went to film a sunset one day in LA, and LA
Mm,
has the most beautiful sunsets. So we drove out to the beach. We get to the beach, and there is this thick layer of fog. Just like, okay, so we're like, well, we can't even see the sun, but we shot the scenes with the fog, and it gave us this sort of ominous vibe that wasn't in the script, wasn't in the part of the plan, but we went with it. And I think that, that's a happy accident. So I think when something like that happens, you get a sandstorm or a windstorm. I mean, I don't know if you're able to shoot something that day, switch up the schedule and shoot an interior or something like that. You can. With your producers and your partners, you come up with a plan B. Okay, if we're doing something outside, because outside is never controllable or predictable.
Yeah.
You can't tell what the weather's going to do. I mean, I live in New England, so it's like we have weather reports, but you can't gamble much on them. So I think that what I've learned to do, Alberto and I have learned to do, is just roll with it and come up with something and just find it forces us in general. It forces us to be creative. So we just have to, but I don't know. I don't know what they ended up doing that day. I'd love to know. It'd be great to find a journal or something out
Mhm.
there that, is a day by day, because that's another tidbit I had no idea.
So they do roll on. The movie eventually does come out January 1996. First week, it makes like 10 million bucks overall, $25 million domestically, 33.5 million internationally. So for a worldwide gross of like almost $60 million, which is a great success by all considerations for an $18 million movie. Um,
Yeah.
it's really interesting how when this movie came out, the violence was a real kind of critical point for a lot of people in the movie because I think a lot of people didn't. I think the shock of just having a movie turn into like a vampire bloodbath in a Mexican, strip joint, was just
Mm.
had a shock for everyone. One country though actually banned the film for a number of years. Ireland had
Oh,
said that the violence in the movie was irresponsible and totally gratuitous, and they banned it. Only came out in 2004 in Ireland
jeez.
as a
Wow.
DVD release. So they banned it for all those years in that country. And what's really interesting is that the green blood that's in the movie at the end with the vampire blood, the reason why Rodriguez wanted the green because he wanted to try to ignore getting like a R rating, so he got like an NC-17 for it. But even that
Hmm.
didn't help in this context. Because and I think at that time as well in the mid 90s, from what I remember, with movies like a lot of Tarantino films and Natural Born Killers and other things like that, violence in cinema is like a really big kind of like a thing that people were talking about. And I think Ireland just had a number of different kind of like massacres and such. So I think they were very kind of wary of having anything presented on the screen. But it's still amazing to think like a movie like From Dusk Till Dawn could be banned for like almost like what. Uh, 2 decades or so. Actually, 2004. So what's that? 8 years it was banned for in a country, like a Western country. Is that kind of
eight
interesting to think
years.
about? You mentioned before Tarantino universe. So
Yeah.
some of the
No,
things that
I
come,
had no idea.
some
Yeah.
of the things that comes up
Hmm.
in the movie. Number one, the character of Earl McGraw. He's like the sheriff, played by Michael. I think it's Michael Parks who plays him. Shows up as well in Kill Bill, Planet Terror, and Death Proof, which is interesting
Hmm.
because I'm pretty sure he got killed in From Dusk Till Dawn. So I'm wondering what timeline is like between all of these kind of things. Um, Seth returns to the hotel with a big Kahuna burger, Pulp Fiction in there. Seth also says the line, "All right, Ramblers, let's get rambling," which is like a line that is in Reservoir Dogs. Another thing that's really interesting, the type of beer that's used in the Titty Twister, the strip joint at the end, is the same beer, fictional beer used in Desperado. I think it's called Chano beer or something like that. So Rodriguez is getting into this kind of stuff as well.
Hmm.
Do you like? What do you think of like when
Django,
directors
yeah.
kind of like? What do you think about it when directors kind of do
Hmm.
that kind of stuff throughout their films, the whole shared universe kind of stuff? Do you find it tacky? Do you find it interesting? Is it entertaining? How do you feel about seeing these kind of little tidbits show up in different films from the same filmmaker?
For the fans, for the fans to notice, especially if it's something like, the big Kahuna burger bag in Dust Till Dawn. It's like they're not, bringing a lot of attention to it, but but the fans will be like, "Oh yeah, Pulp Fiction, Pulp Fiction," you know. So I think subtly it's very cool, and yes, it's interesting that Sheriff McGraw is his first appearance. He actually passes away. He actually dies
Mm,
in Dusk Till Dawn, but yet he lives on after that in these three other movies. So it was kind of a cool move, and such a great character, such a great
mm.
character. I was like, I do remember seeing it the first time, being like, how could they kill him like that? It was just like he came on, and I wanted to see him in the rest of the movie. I mean, it was so it's I think I personally am into subtlety too. It's just
Mm.
things that aren't just kind of shoved in so I think to have that in there, the minor details like the bag, and like the Gecko brothers showing up in this movie I mentioned, Curdled. I think that's always really really cool.
Another thing, the band who plays Tito in the Tarantula, which is the house band, that's actually Robert Rodriguez's band. So he's up there playing with him during the thing. Another thing about that band is that you ever seen Roadhouse, Patrick Swayze film? They
Hmm.
appear in the first scene of
Yes.
Roadhouse. So the first place where Patrick Swayze's playing, I think it's a club in New York or something. That's them. That's them playing. At
Hmm.
least the singer is the same from the same
Oh.
bands in there. So that's a really cool. Like these guys have been around for a while doing this stuff. So I thought that was pretty awesome. Um, I want to talk about favorite scenes. If you could pick a couple of scenes in the movie that really kind of stand out to you, and let's ignore the Salma Hayek kind of dance seduction scene because I think that'll be number one, or any
Oh man.
red blooded male. If we ignore that one, what's the scenes that kind of really stand out for you? Because I got a couple myself. I was wondering what scenes for you really stand out.
I mean, the intro
Yeah.
is like, with Sheriff McGraw and the whole shootout. It really sets the stage. And like I mentioned before, I would have loved to have gone into it not knowing, that it was a vampire movie, because I'm just watching it the whole time, expecting vampires. When are they going to come up? But I think that it really sets the stage for an interesting story, and just sort of the I don't know, the randomness, this idea that that anything can happen in this movie. Okay, the sheriff gets whacked right off the bat, and then
Mm,
this poor Pete, I think his name is, behind the counter. He
yeah.
gets
John Hawkes
set
character.
on
Yeah.
fire and
Yeah.
ends up in a big bed of popcorn that keeps popping, and it's like wow. And then they hit the road, and I thought what was cool in Dust Till Dawn is they hit the road and the credits come up, and even
Mm,
the credits themselves, appear in a scroll and then flash. So the credits themselves are sort of random. So I think that whole sequence and up to the credits is a favorite, because it just sort of introduces us to this world where like anything can happen. Um, so that's definitely a favorite. I think I think, I mean, the last shot of the movie, spoiler alert, when they zoom out and show the whole temple,
yeah.
I guess the underground Mayan pyramid, that was like, wow,
Yeah.
that was pretty mind blowing too, which sort of introduced, a much bigger story. And I don't know if you saw any of the sequels, but
I
I
haven't.
I
No.
thought the third movie was kind of fun too. Oh yeah, the third movie actually takes place in the Wild West and serves as a prequel.
Okay.
If you get a chance, I think you'd shows a little bit of the beginnings of Santanical Pandemonium too.
Okay.
So it's an interesting prequel. Um, but yeah, I think those are two right off the bat. The very beginning, very very end. Um, yeah.
I think the scene that outside of the one you said before, the intro scene, which I think is probably yeah one of the best, definitely one of the best
Hmm.
scenes. But one of my favorites is when they first go to the Titty Twister, and it's Cheech Marin at the front doing his little spiel, which I won't go into now because I don't want to to cross over any kind of censor things and not getting advertising for it. But it's a great scene. He does this little spiel, and when they beat him up and they walk into the place, and they walk in, and it just you just see the whole being in front of you. Like this is like wild, wild west kind of stuff. Like this is just crazy. Just like the strippers and the band and all the different bikers and such. And then you're introduced to all these characters like Tom Savini's sex machine with the pop gun that pops out of his crotch. Like just that whole scene and so. And then Danny Trejo's there. He's the bartender. And yeah, and also just the real the attitude that George Clooney and such have in there. What is they're surrounded by all of these kind of like just mean kind of guys and such. I think there was that one great line where George Clooney says to Danny Trejo, "Do you serve food here?" And Danny Trejo says, "Yes, the best in Mexico." And George Clooney's like, "I kind of doubt that," which I felt was a really kind of great put down there as well. I just love that intro into because then it's funny.
It's
It's like
funny.
almost go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it was. I thought it was a funny thing, and this is the first time I noticed this. I rewatched it the other night, and Trejo actually, could have saved the whole group
Mm,
because he says, you guys shouldn't be here. This is for
truck drivers.
truckers and bikers
Mm,
only.
yeah.
And that was almost, like in a way, he was like, you guys should head out of here. Truck. And then, but there, Keitel's like, well, technically, I'm a truck driver, so it's like to save him in that scene. We're going to take
Mhm.
off. Yeah.
But even before that, like the reason they Tarantino's character beats up Cheech Marin's character is because he says, "You guys are not, you can't come in here." So that's twice they
Hmm.
had those two warnings there actually that they could easily
Yes.
could have left. And by that time,
Hmm.
like by the time he insulted the bartender, they made their bed, they made their bed and slept in it. Their bed should have had some garlic in it or
Yeah.
something though, because it would have helped them. But yeah, that's just how it
Yeah.
goes. There was a TV series as well, right? Didn't Rodriguez do like a TV series for his El Rey? Have you ever seen that? Because I heard that was pretty good.
I think I watched the first couple of episodes, and it came out at a time where I was very busy. I haven't had the chance to revisit it. It's definitely on my list. The funny thing with me about TV series is they're a commitment, and so I want to watch them in as short a time span as possible. I want to see the whole story, and that was one where I'm like, okay, I didn't see The Sopranos and I didn't see Breaking Bad until the pandemic, until we
Mm.
were on lockdown. So that's when I sat down and watched the whole series of those. So I do plan on watching it at some point, but I always try to watch at least the pilot episode, and I was sold on the pilot. It was really good. I believe it was also directed by Robert. So it was,
Yeah.
they nailed the flavor of the films, and I could tell that they were starting, it was starting to do its own thing as a series. But did you watch it?
I haven't had a chance yet. No, I watch so many movies, I kind of miss out on like TV shows. Like you mentioned Breaking Bad, and
Yeah.
I have not seen one episode. Game of
Oh
Thrones, I've
wow.
not seen one episode at all. I do want to though because I really liked how I think it's the Stars Network did the Evil Dead show, Ash versus Evil Dead, and I thought that was
Hmm.
really good. And so when I heard that Rodriguez was involved with the From Dusk Till Dawn series. I was like, I might need to check it out. I might still in the future though. I think I'd rather just rewatch the movie though than watch a TV series again. My whole thing is that why watch the remakes or the adaptations when the original is good as it is, Why listen to the heavy metal band that are rehashing Black Sabbath rips when you could just listen to Black Sabbath, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of like my
Yeah.
kind of philosophy to a lot of this stuff. But yeah,
Mm.
From Dusk to Dawn. It's such a pivotal film when you think about it. Just the people involved. George Clooney's first kind of like big Hollywood kind of breakthrough. Tarantino, Rodriguez together. And even to this day, like a movie like Sinners, for example, that came out last year, very clearly,
Hmm.
like I wouldn't go so far as say rip off, but very clearly took the template of what they were doing with
Hmm.
this movie, and he put it into Ryan Coogler put it in his one as well. So yeah, it is a fantastic film. 30 years since it came out. I think that's mind blown for me.
That's
It really
wild.
is.
Yeah.
It is wild.
Yeah.
Also wild to think that Salma Hayek has aged beautifully as well since then as well. I think that's another great thing to think about it. But yeah, everyone out there, Adam P. Cray, thank you so very much. Everyone out there, please do check out Adam's movie Where the Dead Go, available Tubi and Foursome. I'm going to have the link in the show notes. Check it out. And then Adam, thank you so very much for your time today, talking all things from Dusk Till Dawn with me. It's a great movie to look back on and reflect on, and hopefully we can do this again in the future. It's been a pleasure.
Sounds great, Matthew. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.